Alrighty, hey guys, welcome to another lesson. This one is one of the most important lessons that we have when it really comes down to quitting porn, and not only quitting it, but also replacing the habit. And this lesson is going to be covering the three-step method to addressing triggers, emotional triggers, physical triggers, external triggers, sexual triggers. And this is critical because when the rubber hits the road, this is the ultimate question, is when you are feeling this dissonance in your day, or this desire to go back to your habit, or you kind of have that inkling or that feeling like you're going to act out, you're going to slip up. This is the three-step method that I've developed based on years, more than a decade of my personal experience of helping men. Almost every single day, I talk with men about their exact triggers, what leads them to have this desire to escape, to go back to porn. My personal experience after battling a porn addiction for more than 15 years, even after I was married, even after I have kids, and anyways, going through all of that. So this is the three-step method that I call the 3 W's, okay? The WWW method to manage triggers, all right? Now, the reason that I make it 3 W's is because it's easy to remember, and so when it really counts, when you're really struggling, or when you're really feeling that feeling, you can go back to this method. And I'll explain briefly in this video what it's about, and then when we check in every day about how you're doing, or every week, you can actually let me know based on this method, all right? So the 3 W's are why, where, who, okay? Simple. Why, where, and who. Just remember that, and it should get you through this. Why, where, who. So the first question is simply, why am I feeling this? All right, let's say, for example, one day you just feel immense stress, you feel frustrated, you feel agitated, irritated for whatever reason because of something small, you feel stressed out, you feel aroused, you feel anything like that. I want you to ask yourself why, but it's not enough to use, for most men, it's not enough to just ask why one time. I want you to ask yourself why 3 times, at least 3 times, meaning, why do I feel that? And then answer, and then ask to that question, why do I feel that? And ask 3 times. And if you ask yourself 3 times, usually you come to a conclusion that's a lot deeper than you thought originally, right? So let's take some examples. For example, like for me, I'll use my own very, very personal raw experience of being a married man and having a lot of stress in my relationship with my wife. And whenever we would argue, especially early on in our relationship, in our marriage, we would fight, and I would always go back to porn. Like every single time, I would always go back to porn. So in this example, ask myself, why am I angry? Like, why am I stressed out in this relationship with my wife? If I ask myself one time why, the easy solution is, well, because my wife's a biatch, or like, because my wife is, etc., etc. That's usually the justification that I made, and always just left it there and went to porn, right, and masturbation. But if I ask myself a little deeper, like, okay, getting honest with myself, why do I feel this tension in my relationship? It's like, well, because when my wife and I are fighting, I feel a lot of anxiety about my role as a man, about my role as a husband. Okay, why is it that I feel so much stress and anxiety? Keeping it on myself and not blaming her anymore, right? I'm keeping it, why do I feel that? So if I feel it one layer more, I realize, oh, well, I have a lot of stress and anxiety because I feel a lot of like personal pressure and mission to be a good husband. And when I feel like we're fighting or not in agreement or we're arguing, I feel like I am failing. Like I genuinely feel like I have this deep-seated feeling like I'm failing as a man and I'm not providing. Okay, so it gets pretty deep really quick, right? But this is a very personal example. But if you do this enough with your own life and your own examples, you'll get pretty quick at it, all right? And it just takes a few times of doing this practice. The first few times you do it, you'll discover like very quickly, it's like, oh, I'm feeling aroused because of this. I'm feeling stressed out because of this. Anxious, I'm feeling bored because of this, right? And you keep asking yourself why 3 times. So that's the first W, all right? For most men, that is a lot. Like just to understand why, because then your brain, which is, in many terms is the enemy in this porn addiction, your brain starts to understand logically and reasons with yourself to why going to porn is not a logical conclusion when you're feeling these emotions or negative emotions or unpleasant emotions, right? So that's the first step, is asking why. Usually that's enough, but it's actually not enough because it doesn't leave you with an actionable action. Like what can you do right now to go in a different direction? So I created these 2 other W's, right? So the second W is, where do I want to go? Okay, so I've identified, in my personal example, I'm feeling a lot of stress today because of my relationship, this fighting with my wife. She's angry at me. I want to escape. I want to go to porn because I don't like this painful feeling of feeling like I'm failing as a man, okay? I know that gets very raw and very deep, right? So where I want to go, this is the next question. Where do I want to go with this feeling that I'm having? Where do I want to go? Now, there are many different directions you can go, and I'm going to list some here in this video, and I want you to pick the ones that you really resonate with and you really feel like you want to grab onto and go in that direction, right? Because the people that have mastery over their porn habit or their sexual integrity, in other words, or any addiction, they are able to respond and react to those unpleasant feelings and emotions with productive behaviors, right? That's the definition of somebody who can manage mood regulation and addictions better than other people, right? Generally speaking, why women are better at this than we are. Because some people, not just women, some people are better at mood regulation and directing their energy and their emotion to somewhere productive. So where you want to go, all right? So in my example, stress. Why am I feeling the stress? I've identified that. Where do I want to go with this stress? Is I want to respond to this with gratitude and compassion. And that's something that's personal to me. It's like, I want to be, instead stressed and angry at my wife, I want to have gratitude for my wife, that we're even in this relationship, that we can be honest with each other, that we can fight with each other, that we can grow together, that I even have a wife. I want to be grateful, and I want to have compassion for my wife. I want to have compassion because maybe she's having a bad day. Maybe she's going through some personal issues, and instead of responding to her bad day with judgment and getting personal and taking it personally and feeling shame and disappointed in myself as a man, I can have compassion for her and stop making it about me, all right? So here's some other examples, right? If you're feeling stress, maybe instead of going to stress, you can go to, I want gratitude and I want to have compassion, right? Maybe at work, you're feeling a lot of stress. Okay, I'm feeling a lot of stress, and you figured out why you feel stressed. Where do I want to go? I want to have gratitude that I even have a job, okay? I want to have compassion for people that don't have the type of lifestyle or situation or job circumstance that I do. That's having a different perspective. That's going in a different direction. Here are some other ones. If you feel anxiety, if that's your primary emotion you're feeling one day, and you say, I feel a lot of anxiety because of finances, or anxiety because of relational issues, or anxiety because of the future. I'm uncertain about the future. I have worry, anxiety. So instead of dealing with anxiety in a negative way, instead I want to go to excitement. I want to have excitement for the future. You see where we're going? I want to have gratitude that I have an opportunity to learn something new. Instead of feeling anxiety about going to a social event or to a party, which many times we do, right? Feel anxious about these social circumstances or whatever. I feel anxiety about this presentation I have to give at work. I want to feel excitement instead. I want to see this opportunity as a way to learn, as a way to grow, as a way to make connections, to build relationships, to build networks, whatever. Another negative emotion or unpleasant emotion is boredom. Very common for guys who have a porn habit, right? Instead of saying, I'm bored, after you've identified the reason, step one, why I feel bored, where do I want to go with that emotion? Do I want to just sit in boredom and say, wow, life sucks, I'm bored, the only thing that's going to fulfill me is video games, porn, or social media? No. Instead, you can say, I want to experience enjoyment instead of boredom. I want to experience enjoyment in the little things. I want to be able to just sit outside on the porch or take a walk outside in nature and just enjoy it without stimulating myself externally, without hyper stimulating or overstimulating myself to the point where I require a bigger dose or a greater dose or a more frequent dose just to live my life. I want to just be excited about the little things, okay? Another example, or a negative emotion, would be loneliness. I might feel really lonely today, okay? Which is normal and natural and fine, and it's okay. So after you've identified, I feel lonely, why do I feel lonely? You really peel that back, at least 3 layers, and then you ask yourself, where do I want to go with this emotion? I want to go towards, what? Friendship. I want to go towards experiencing love. And if you make that like your mantra, is like, I don't want to be bored, or I don't want to be lonely. I want to experience friendship and love. All right. Another a very common emotion is arousal, right? Okay. Let's say you're feeling aroused sexually, and you've identified why you might be feeling aroused on this particular day, and you've peeled that back a few times. So where can you go with that arousal that you're experiencing? Where can you direct that to? Well, you can direct it to having passion or having drive. Many times it's the things that we know we need to do that we're not doing are the things that are actually going to help us get out of that state of arousal, right? Maybe you have a project, maybe you have a hobby, maybe you have something with work, maybe you have that thing you've been avoiding for a long time, that guitar that's sitting in the corner of your room in your closet that you've never picked up. Maybe you can direct that arousal to something that's creative and passionate, right? Another example of a negative, unpleasant emotion is shame. If you feel shameful and you've figured out why you feel shame, what's some other direction you can direct that? Maybe you feel shame, like I'm a piece of garbage. Maybe you're in a funk and you just don't feel inspired. You can direct that to feeling determined, right? I'm determined to do better, to be better. And I don't want to feel like shame anymore. I don't want to live with a cloud over my head anymore. I want to get rid of this, okay? So that's step 2. We figured out why you feel this emotion. We figured out where you want to go, and this is where the action comes in, okay? Number 3 is who, all right? Who do I want to tell about this? Now, this is really, really important, because unless you figure out this piece of the puzzle, none of this will matter, because none of this will progress you forward to actually changing, okay? And I'm going to give you 3 examples of who you can tell depending on your situation, and I'm going to list them according to what is most effective in terms of releasing this energy and this emotion that you're feeling, and this unpleasant emotion, or kind of feeling off one day. And then I'm going to list it 3 things, and then so first is going to be the most effective, and the last is going to be the least effective, right? So the most effective is to tell the right person, share the right person. What do you share with this person? The first thing that you of this step is the why, okay, and the where. You go back to the first 2 things and you share that with the right person. All right, that's the most effective thing. Why is it the most effective thing? It's because you're getting outside of your head. All right, like I said, the PMO habit, porn addiction, is happening in the brain. It's happening in your brain. Let's be real. Your porn habit has been happening in your brain for a long time. For a lot of you guys, most of your life. For a lot of you guys, more than a decade. For many years at least. So it's time to get outside of the brain. It's time to do something different. And when you do that, something very magical happens. It sends a very strong signal to yourself and to your brain that you are doing something different, that things are not business as usual. You're going to get rid of this habit and things are going to get better. That's the signal that is really strong, that's sending to your brain when you tell somebody, because it's different, all right? But there's also something that's infinitely more important when you tell somebody, if you tell the right person, is you experience acceptance, grace, and being seen. And when you experience that, you realize that there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing that you are unworthy of. There's no feeling of like, oh, I'm unworthy of grace and acceptance and love from anybody. What's interesting is people that are in the program, you know, if they've made a mistake or they made a misstep or they saw something that they shouldn't have seen online, many times people are afraid to tell me and to report to me honestly that they had a slip up or they made a mistake. And I find that very interesting, right? And as a guy who had a porn addict, I understand why that is. But when they do finally tell me, and I ask them, why did you tell me 3 days later instead of the day of? And they say, because I was afraid that you'd be upset at me, that I would be disappointed in them, right? And I understand why people say that, but it's actually very silly to me, honestly. Because as a guy who's been through this, I have nothing but grace and love and acceptance and compassion. And honestly, just I feel for people like this, for you guys. So I have no need or desire to express any judgment. But the thing is, what you have learned your entire life is that when you are honest and when you make mistakes, somebody will be disappointed in you. And when you are not perfect and you do things that are not in line with what you're supposed to do or with what you want to do, you feel like somebody is going to be disappointed or angry in you. And that's why it's hard to share. But when you experience that, when you tell somebody honestly how you're feeling and why you're feeling this emotion in such a deep and vulnerable way, and you're seen for who you are, what you experience is unconditional grace and acceptance from someone. That is extremely healing, and that's actually what you need. That is actually the antidote to your porn habit, okay? That is the antidote to getting rid of this habit for good, is being able to share with people and letting yourself be seen, because when you do that, guess what happens? You eliminate the shame that is associated with your habit. you eliminate the shame, and that's how you live with no shadows in your life. Because the fastest way to eliminate shame is to shed light on it. The fastest way to eliminate a shadow is to shed light on it. And when you shed that light on it, it stops having this weight over you. It stops having this power over you, because you've been giving porn so much power for so long because you've been feeling ashamed of it. But when you tell people, the right people, it eliminates that. So here's the thing though, guys. When we're talking about this 3-step process, the 3 W's, you don't have to tell anybody about your porn habit. And when I tell people that to guys, they go, "Are you serious?" Like, no, you don't. You don't have to tell anybody. In fact, it's actually not recommended and actually can be destructive, because you're actually masking the real issue that's going on here. The real issue is a lot less to do with porn itself and more to do with your internal state. It has more to do with that feeling off one day, that feeling of unpleasant emotions and anger and frustration and depression and boredom, and all the reasons that you choose to go to porn to escape. All the reasons that you choose to go to this habit to escape a specific kind of pain. That's the reason that you have this habit. And that's the issue at hand. So if you just mask it with, "Hey, I'm feeling triggered, accountability partner," or whoever, "I'm feeling triggered, spouse," "I'm feeling triggered, parents," God, whoever, to watch porn, you're actually masking the real issue. So that's what I'm teaching you how to do in this 3-step process. Why am I feeling this? Where do I want to go with this emotion? Who am I going to tell? Right? And when you tell somebody, it doesn't have to be so deep. It doesn't have to be like, "Oh, when I was a child, this experience happened to me, and that's why I'm so sexually, whatever. And I have this weird sex fetish, and when I watch porn, I watch the weirdest kind of stuff." They don't have to know any of that. They just have to know really what's going on with that deep negative emotion that you have. All right? And when you've peeled it back enough and asked yourself why, you will be clear in sharing with them, "This is why I'm feeling stressed today. Hey, honey, wife, friend," it's like, in my example that I shared earlier, I feel a lot of stress today because I'm fighting with my wife, and I honestly, I think it's because I feel like I'm failing as a husband, and I think that's a ridiculous thing to think, but that's how I feel. And if they're the right person, if the right kind of person is in your life, then they'll listen, right? Now, the next question people have is, how do you find the right person, right? And ultimately, this takes a little bit of trial and error. Now, the reality is that something that you have to face is that more than likely, the people that are currently in your life are not the right people, okay? Let that sit for a little bit, all right? Currently, the people in your life might not be the right people to have in your tribe, in your clan, in your support system, because the reason that you're here right now with this porn habit and taking this program is because you haven't had the support, the adequate support, to be able to support you in your times of need, all right? Now, I'm not saying that nobody in your life right now is the right person. What I'm saying is that maybe the type of relationship you have with these people in your life needs to change a little bit. The dynamic and relationship with them can be tweaked a little bit so that they can support you in the right way. And maybe you need to create a support system and a clan of people that you don't know right now, and be open to that opportunity and that option as well, all right? So for me, for example, my wife was my primary right person in my times of need for most of my life, until she wasn't enough, because I was really struggling with this porn habit in my own marriage, and when we were fighting and arguing, she was the last person I wanted to go to, but also was the main thing that I needed to do was to talk to somebody, and she didn't want to hear it either. So what I had to do was to develop a wider support net and system so that I could talk with more people. So then I started talking with my brother once a week, and we still do that to this day. We talk every week about kind of more deep things that came up through the week, and we just share honestly and vulnerably like that. We're seen by each other. I share with my dad more openly than I ever have before, and that's someone that I never thought I would, but I developed that relationship to the point that I could. I also have a Facebook group, a message that I have just a bunch of dudes that are in, just kind of guys, dads, they have kids that are similar to my kids in age, and we just talk about like stresses and anger that we feel, and we kind of just share openly like how we're doing. It's an opportunity for me personally to be seen by people that I know will love, accept, and give me grace, regardless of the mistakes I make or how I'm feeling, and regardless of all the support system I've made, I've never had to talk about porn with these people, because it's very little to do with porn, and it's more to do with the emotional state that I have that I don't know how to release. And that's why you have to have it, right? So that's how you have to build a system. Another guy that I was working with had nobody, he's a very religious man who had felt like he didn't have anybody. His parents wouldn't understand. His current friends wouldn't understand. He had absolutely nobody to talk to about his emotional state, even if he's stressed, even if he's just feeling lonely, he has no one to go to. So I was like, okay, so you can basically maintain this course, this direction in your life, and just be alone your entire life, probably never get married because you've never learned how to be vulnerable to and open with somebody. Or you can develop a support system and find people in your life and make new friends that you can actually have this more deep, intimate relationship with, right? And that's what he did. And you know what he did? He found random people on the internet in Facebook groups. He joined like masterminds, and he joined courses and groups, etc. And you just found people from all over the country, like 2 or 3 people from different states in the United States. And he decided to make these people his tribe, his support system, his best friends, where he checks in with almost every day about his emotional state. And they meet up maybe once a month by Zoom, and every single day they're calling each other and they're texting each other because that's what's needed. And guess what? He's doing extremely well. All right? And that's what it takes. And at one point, this guy was like, this is really hard. He was like, this is really hard finding my support group. I don't know how to do this. And I was like, yeah, it's probably going to be hard because you've never done this before, and that's okay. But then I looked at him and I was like, you know what is even harder? Being alone and with no support your whole life, and never beating this porn addiction because you've never had somebody to talk to about your internal state. That's harder. Like, isn't that a lot harder? And he was like, actually, yeah, that sucks. And that's what I've been doing for years. So I was like, you've got to pick your heart. It might be a little hard at first, but you're going to love having people to actually have your back. Wouldn't that be nice? To have guys that understand you, that will unconditionally accept you and give you grace and approval, regardless of who you are and what you do, what mistakes you've made, and you can be yourself. He's like, yeah, that's nice. And that's what he did, which is awesome, right? So the name of the game is expanding your support system and having more people that you can connect with every single day, every single week. And that's the name of the game. And I promise you, the reason that you have this porn habit, the reason you have it is because you've developed a dependency and a need for it because you've not addressed your negative emotions, stress, depression, anxiety, boredom, loneliness, arousal. You have never learned how to address those in a productive way, and you've always escaped that pain to porn, to masturbation. And I'm willing to bet social media and video games too, or some other supernormal stimulant, right? And the way to address this and fix it is to create a support system where you can address these emotions that we're talking about in a productive and non-destructive way. Because until now, it's always been destructive, and it's always been an easy fix and an easy escape to go into a reality that is fake and false. And this is the time to fix that, all right? Okay, so I share with you so far the 3 W's. Why am I feeling this way? Where do I want to go with this emotion? And thirdly, who will I tell and who will I share with, okay? And inside the who will I share with, we've identified the best thing you can do is share with one person. Share with the right person, the right type of person, okay? Someone who will unconditionally accept and approve of you regardless of what you share with them, all right? The second best thing that you can do when you're telling someone is to journal about it, all right? You can think of this as like telling yourself, okay? Journaling about it is very powerful because you take it outside of your brain and you kind of just put it on paper. If you've ever felt like journaling was beneficial and you never did it again, you know why you've never done it again? I don't know. For some reason, when you journal and start doing it, it's like, oh, that was really awesome. And then you never do it again, right? But journaling is really good, but it's also not the best thing because it's still kind of happening in your brain. It's a little better than just thinking about it by yourself. It's because you're actually putting on a paper, but it's also not the best thing. And the third thing you can do that's not the best thing, it's not ideal, but it's also can be effective for some people, is prayer, okay? Prayer. And this can be effective because if depending on your beliefs and depending on the depth of relationship with God, with your spirituality, this can be a very effective way to just offer it up to God and say, God, I'm feeling this overwhelming feeling of this unpleasant emotion, and I would like to go in the direction of not experiencing stress, but actually experiencing compassion and excitement and enjoyment instead. Instead of experiencing arousal, I want to experience drive and passion and direct my sex drive in a productive and creative way. Maybe even finding a partner, or maybe even investing that energy into my wife, right? I don't want to experience shame anymore, God. I want to experience feeling determined to take my life to the next level. So that's the third thing you can do, is pray. Anyways, I really hope this video is helpful for you guys. The 3 W's, when we're checking in every day, when we are doing our check-ins and seeing how you're doing every day, this is a really important framework. When you're feeling triggered, when you're feeling that something is off, even slightly off, before you even engage and like watch a YouTube video that you shouldn't, or TV show that you shouldn't, or Instagram profile that you shouldn't watch, before you even go there, you go, all right, I gotta take a step back. I gotta do the figure out what my trigger is and backtrack from here.com, and then you'll have success. All right, guys. I love you all. Take care.